Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming this morning. My name is Lyndall Fraker. I'm the director of the medical marijuana program for the state of Missouri, and we're with the Missouri Department of Health. So glad you're here. This is the first of 10 committees, advisory committees, that we've asked some people to help us with the scoring and help us with the questions and the scoring for the licensing part of the program. They won't actually be doing the scoring, but they'll be helping us with the questions and scoring. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to just go ahead and hand the mic to these folks and let them introduce themselves and the department or either with it.
I'm Paul Bailey. I'm with the Missouri Department of Agriculture, the Division Director for the Plant Industries Division.
Hi, this is Wei-Ying Johnson. I'm with Department of Health, Department of Health and the Community and Public Health section.
Hi, I'm Lyle Rowland. I'm not with anyone. I'm a retired educator. I served the last 8 years in the House of Representatives here in Missouri for the 155th District. I'm proud to be back on the farm and just raising cattle and trying to raise some crops. So I'm helping the agriculture end of it.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Good morning. My name is Steve Jurhoff. I'm not on the committee, but I'm legal counsel for the Department of Health.
And I'm Richard Moore. I'm the general counsel for the Department of Health, and I'll go into the details in a minute.
Sure.
You have anything else you want to?
I'll just give a brief, okay.
I'll turn this back over to Richard here in just a few minutes, but I thought I would just briefly update the folks here where we're at with the program in Missouri. As all of you know, Amendment 2 passed November the 6th of this past year. Amendment 2 is the new medical marijuana program for Missouri, and it said that the Missouri Department of Health would be the department that oversees the program. It passed with an overwhelming 65% majority. It was one of 3 initiatives that were on the ballot, and so this is the one that won big, actually, led the ticket for all ballot positions. So what we're trying to do today is we're trying to help, as I mentioned, help us with the scoring and the licensing part of the program. We've been working really hard on the rules. We have several deadlines that the amendment calls out that we have to meet. So far, we've met those deadlines. But our next major deadline is June the 4th, and that's the date that we have to have all the rules and all the applications, application forms and licensing forms in place and published. So we're working really hard on that. So this piece, these committee meetings are part of that part. The August the 3rd is the date that we begin accepting the applications for the licensed facilities. We plan to issue about 340 licenses for cultivation, manufacturing, and dispensary facilities. And those numbers were called out in the amendment, the minimum numbers, and we plan to stick with those minimums at this time, based on the supply and demand for the state of Missouri, the estimates at least. So with that, I think I'll go ahead and turn it over to Richard. He will moderate the committee meeting today. I'll be here for a little while. I have another meeting out of town I have to go attend, so we'll turn this over to Richard Moore. Thank you. Thanks for coming.
All right. Well, let's do a few little housekeeping things. For those of you that might need a bathroom during the proceeding, if you go out this door, there's a spiral staircase. Turn right at the spiral staircase, and there's bathrooms on the left-hand side. As Lyndall said, we're working through the rulemaking process and developing the questions. Those processes and that work is being done through the Office of General Counsel, so it's within my office. Myself, Steve, and our colleague Amy Moore are the 3 primary people that are working on the rules and the questions. The questions you should have had the opportunity to see not only for this committee but for all committees. There's approximately 150 questions we've posted on our website. We are trying to ask questions in such a way that we can find disparity between the applicants based on their responses. We are not asking very broad questions and having a huge amount of subjectivity in the scoring of broad questions. We're trying to ask very specific questions, and in doing so, we'll have far more control of the subjectivity of the score. So that's the reason in which we're doing that. One of the things that's important to note is that the Constitution places certain requirements on us, one of which is to develop rules on the various topics. The draft rules, which you also have the opportunity to see on our website, and we encourage any comments that you have on those rules to be submitted to us, as we are about to put up the last set of rules for public comment, and we will keep those rules open until very near the last moment, so that the public has ample time to make comments on those. We will close those in the mid part of May, and we will have to publish those as emergency rules at the latter part of May. So the timeline on opportunity to comment is starting to draw close, and so we hope you take advantage of that opportunity. Within the rules themselves, there are minimum requirements, and as you read the questions that we've presented in all topics, including this one, you might ask, why have we not asked a certain question? Likely the reason for that is that the rules have a minimum requirement already, in which we are satisfied that if all applicants meet those minimum requirements, that is all we need for that topic. So we've asked additional questions that are truly built on top of what the minimum requirements of the rules are. How the process today is going to play out as far as the committee, we have put the questions before them. They've given us their initial feedback of the questions. We then took those revised questions, we put it on our website, and we gave opportunity for the public to review the questions, give us feedback. We closed the window for that on Monday of this week. We took the comments we received, we revised the questions again, and then we submitted those questions to the committee members. Since that time, we've received a few amendments from committee members, and we're going to work through those today. So we're going to start with the top question on the list. We're going to see if committee members agree with the question, feel like it needs to be modified, or see if it needs to be deleted. Hopefully we have consensus among the group. That's the goal here. Once we determine a question meets the requirements of the committee, we're going to ask the committee to establish what they believe the importance level of that question is. And we've provided the scale for them, but I will read it to you so you all have the opportunity to know what we're talking about. Slightly important, and we've categorized that as one point, although the points have nothing to do with the weighting of this at this point. 2 would be important, 3 would be highly important, and 4 would be critically important. So hopefully we get a consensus on the question, we get a consensus on the score, the weight for that as far as the level of importance. And then the department is going to take this information once we get all the questions for this one done. We're going to take it back. We're going to continue to receive public comment on them. We're going to give substantial weight to the decisions that is made by this committee. So it's not closed out, but there's a great amount of deference that we're going to give to the committee's recommendations. They're subject matter experts and have experience in the field, and we're going to rely on them heavily. If there's a necessary tweak, we will do that, as the responsibility ultimately lies with the department to establish the rules. Those will be included in the emergency rules that we file in late May. So with that, does any committee member have a question about the basic process we're going to follow? Okay. If you would look at the chart that we sent to you with the yellow top, we printed off and provided this morning. We'll just kind of go down through the questions. I will tell you question 119, 120, and 121 is recommended by the department to be deleted based on public comment. And then we have amendments on questions 122, 123, 124, and 125, including the addition of 4 additional questions beyond that, and those should all be reflected in the piece of paper that looks like this that I provided to you. So let's just begin with question 1, which is describe your experience with agriculture and/or horticulture. Anybody have a concern with the wording of that question? Okay, seeing none. I would request that you amongst yourselves, decide what you believe the importance of that question is within the topic. The department says we believe it should be somewhere between between important and highly important, and we are eager for your feedback.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay?
Highly important.
Next question is, do you have professional experience with healthcare as it relates to growing substances for medical or therapeutic purposes?
I don't have a problem with the question. I'm not sure it's really relevant in the production of the plan, but I'd say it's slightly important.
Okay. Good. All right, so you're fine with the question,
Fine with the question.
okay? And then we recommended a one which is slightly important. Is that?
I say slightly important.
Would you agree with that? Or is it important?
For healthcare, you could be specific.
Uh-huh.
Let me tell you, one of the basis, and I probably should have mentioned this earlier, the Constitution provides 10 topics that we have to score upon. The questions for this section requires in the case of medical marijuana cultivation facilities, capacity or experience with agriculture, horticulture, and healthcare. So it is a required general question within the Constitution we have to ask. So that's why the question was phrased the way in which it is.
I know there's other substances out there that are grown. Do they have to meet strict requirements if it's for a medicinal purpose? No.
I'm aware of.
It's not an area which I aware. I mean, there would be an ultimate testing requirement for medicinal purposes, certainly. But as far as the growing of it, I don't believe that there are requirements that would be placed upon them at that stage. But certainly before it is allowed to be ingested.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
Well, I'd say since the Constitution requires healthcare, that it should be at least equal, which would be highly important as to the agricultural horticulture question.
If that's your opinion, that's true. That's totally fine. I don't believe the Constitution only requires that we ask questions within that topic. They do not put a level of importance on it. All of these questions will fall into those words in which I read to you.
Okay, I understand.
Okay.
I'm gonna stick with my slightly important one. In my opinion, agriculture and horticulture experience is greater importance for growing plants.
Mhm.
Somebody with healthcare knowledge is not gonna know if that's all they have. It's just not gonna have that further.
Yeah. Would you be comfortable with this one? Yeah.
I don't mean to hog the microphone too. If you guys
Slightly
want-
important.
Slightly important, all right. So the department is recommending the deletion of 119, 120, and 121. I'll read them for everyone's ability to understand what we're talking about. Will the facility have a physician or pharmacist related to retained for consultation to establish their processes? Anyone have a concern with deleting that question?
I don't.
120, will the facility have a physician or pharmacist retained for consultation after the processes are established?
Yeah. Kick it out.
121, describe the experience in cultivating plants for human consumption as food or medical products.
And that's basically covered in those first two questions, I think.
Yeah, yes. We deleted the question and reused it in the other questions.
Yeah.
All right, question 122, which was originally describe your experience with genetic modification or breeding. Ms. Johnson suggests that we delete that question, I believe. Yes. Anyone have a concern with deleting that question?
No, I don't.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Question 123, describe your experience with maintaining a sanitary grow facility. Ms. Johnson suggested to amend it to read, describe your experience with maintaining a sanitary growing facility, comma, from seed or clone through packaging.
That's a better question. I agree. You know, like the name.
And put a pretty high importance.
Yes. I'd say
Critical.
it's Critical.
Critical.
Okay. Yes to the question, and a critical, so that is a 4 for our purposes. Okay, the next question is question 124. Originally was describe your experience with tracking plants to a harvest. Ms. Johnson suggested changing that to describe your experience with product coding / traceability.
I agree with that amendment.
Yeah, I do too, because you've got different varieties, and you're going to have. You just need to be able to trace them if there is a problem. So you need to know what their plan is for doing that.
Okay.
I agree. And you know, we had. I was thinking that there might be a place for inventory too, of keeping track of what is in that facility.
Sure. The Constitution requires a seed to sale tracking system, and there's rules, very specific rules, and there's going to be agreements that are going to have to be created between vendors and licensees. We will know where every plant, every seed is through the entire process, from the time it is either cloned or is planted as a seed, all the way through the time it is sold to the ultimate recipient, the purchaser. So as far as that, I believe the rules and the Constitution takes care of that.
Okay.
I believe there are also software programs already out there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which
That's
we are
great.
requiring.
That's great to know.
All right, so the question then on 124, describe your experience with product coding traceability.
Yes.
I believe the question is fine. What value would you put on that?
I'd say it's highly important, if not critical.
I would say critical myself. Would you, or do you want to go highly?
Depends on the size of operation. If it's large, it would be very critically important to track. I would go with.
What do you think?
Let's just make it critical. I mean, this is going to be a very,
Yeah.
very important.
Critical.
Critical.
Okay. Question 125 was originally describe your experience with recalls. The department staff has suggested the amendment that's on the very last line of the supplemental amendment page we provided to you, to read, describe your experience with recalls and any proposed plan to recall medical marijuana.
I think that's a better question. I like the amendment.
I concur.
For you. So is keeping the amendment, or we're accepting the amendment, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what level of importance would you put to that? I would say that probably from my recommendation would probably be important. If a recall occurs, it's going to be, an ordered recall. The department would be ordering, and we would be putting specifications around what they would have to require, what they would have to do. So the plan is important to think about the process prior to a recall occurring, but in reality, it's largely going to be dictated to them if it's a requirement. Yeah.
I'd say important.
Important. I can agree.
Question 126, describe any existing or future plans for utility provider agreements. Let me give you a little background on this. It's a cultivation facility potentially would utilize a great deal of electricity and a great deal of water. Depending on where this facility places itself, say, I mean, a cultivation facility truly can be anywhere in the state. It could actually be places where the property value is relatively low. So because of that, it may be in a very remote place. We want to be sure that they have worked through contacting their local cooperative or their local energy provider, whether it be Ameren, KCP&L, any of the like, Empire, and worked through those agreements because they're going to be potentially using a great deal of electricity.
During drought, if they're within a municipality or a county watershed, water can be shut off to them too.
Right.
So that's very important. I like the question. Utility, I think people mainly think about electricity. They don't give water consideration.
Would you like to put parentheses electric and water?
I think that would probably be best, yes.
You know, maybe this may be a totally different type of question, but when you're talking utilities, sometimes I was thinking of trash disposal, sewers. What happens to plants if they're growing them, the plant dies? They're tracking that. How is it disposed of? Do they flush it? Do they burn it? Do they,
There's rules that are in draft form that will be finalized that explains exactly what happens to the marijuana, whether it needs to be composted with 50% organic material, whether it needs to be, some other places I believe uses bleach and some of the other things, grind it up into an unusable form and compost type thing. So there's going to be some latitude for the cultivator or dispenser or whoever that generates waste, but it's all very lined out in the rule.
Okay. That answers my question.
Do we have a rule regulation on the wastewater? How do they dispose?
We have been in contact with the Department of Natural Resources, and they've provided how they prefer the rule look. So yes, we've addressed that.
Thank you.
All right.
Taking his change, I would agree with that.
All right. All right. So then we're changing 126 to read, describe any existing or future plans for utility, parenthetical, electric and water, in parenthetical, provider agreements. And what do you believe the weight of that question should be? The department recommended a 1 or 2. As I said, it is.
I'd say it's important. It's a plan up front.
I could go with that. Important.
Okay. So it'd be 2. All right. So then, if you go to the sheet, the suggested amendments, there are 4 new questions that Ms. Johnson submitted. New question 1, describe the design and capacity / size of your proposed cultivation facility. I will say that in one of the other 10 questions, the department is requesting what the blueprints will be, the design of the facility. So we will have that information, but I believe Ms. Johnson believed it was necessary for the score within this subject matter to have an appreciation of what the size of the facility would be. And without a question like this, they would not have that information because they would just be looking at what is for them.
I agree with that. It's important for cultivation to understand that and grasp. I think it's a good question.
Okay.
Yeah. Same here.
What level of weight would you give to that?
I'd say important.
Important.
Okay, moving on to new question 2. Describe the technology to be used in growing medical marijuana in your proposed cultivation facility. Another question proposed by Ms. Johnson.
Would this be like hydroponic or?
The greenhouse for hydroponics have different simple, very commercialized, have an environmental control, something like that. I think it's the sophistication of the technology.
I would agree. It certainly is. on the different scales, you know, you go from a hoop house to a multi-million-dollar facility real quick, and it changes.
Okay.
Okay, question's fine. What weight would you give to that?
Important.
I'd say it's important, yes.
Okay, new question 3. Describe your experience with food safety practices, including any certifications.
In what you said earlier about the regulations, would this necessarily be needed in this particular question?
What I would say is that the way the Constitution lays out the requirements and the way that the rules lay them out, no medical marijuana will be sold to a consumer prior to testing of the batch. Everything you do prior to it being packaged and ready for sale, although important and needs to be done correctly, if there is some failure in that process, it should be caught with the testing at the batch level. So, yes, I think it is a valuable thing whenever you're looking at how to rank one cultivator versus another cultivator in scoring. But in reality, as far as whether in production, it's probably not as important because there's going to be minimum standards and safeguards put in place to make sure the consumers get quality product.
Okay. What?
I understand what you're saying. I'm struggling trying to grasp. I really don't think it actually should belong. I think it's a question that we should not accept or include.
121 is basically the same type of question. Am I not?
121's been deleted.
Yeah, but
Oh, yes.
what I'm saying,
But it's been deleted.
but we deleted it, but it asks basically the same thing. That's what I'm wondering.
It kind of circles back around to it.
Yeah. Do you want to state your point?
And, good agriculture practices and HACCP and ISO certification would ensure the quality of product. I think it's based on that of this question. I know they will be tested, but during the operation, if the staff learned about this food safety practices, I think that will help their product. And I know we have a check for the test, but if they can follow through from the beginning to the end, they will have less error, less contamination.
And these questions are going to decide who gets the license to grow it.
Correct.
So if
I understand what Wayne is saying. It's a little clearer. She's talking about GMP, good manufacturing,
Yeah, GAP.
and GAP.
Yeah.
Good agricultural practices
I'm going to move this down. I'm talking loud.
are
You guys-
utilized in vegetable and produce production. They are not required under federal or state law. It's a voluntary practice that a lot of large buyers, such as Walmart, Kroger, Publix grocery stores, require producers, such as our watermelon growers in the Blue Hill, to utilize and implement these voluntary practices to ensure the quality of the fruit through the growth. And I think that's what Wayne is trying to get to, is suggesting that these cultivators of marijuana follow or have some experience, acknowledge that they have some experience utilizing these type of measures in the production of quality plant before it goes to processing to be placed in the fruit. Is that right?
that could help on the recall. they wouldn't have near as many
That's right.
recalls possibly
That's right.
if they had some experience like that. I see what she's saying now. I can agree with that question.
It probably needs to be reworded so it's understood better.
Okay, what would you suggest? And the one thing I will try to provide a little bit of guidance with you on, we try to ask the questions in such a way that on a 10-point scale, which I provided to you, there can be some separation between them. So, there are a few questions where we ask, do you have X certification? Yes or no, points are awarded. But generally, we're trying to craft the question in such a way so there can be some disparity between people that don't have a lot or have none versus some that have an exceptional amount of experience in that. So as you think about how you're going to word that, try to keep that in mind.
Could we word as describe the plan with food safety practices? They can train the workers and log.
Yeah, the food I think is problematic. I think we probably ought to replace it with GAP, Good Agricultural Practices.
In parentheses, G.
Right.
That's clear.
So are we doing food safety?
I think food safety is coming out.
Okay.
And its place
What
is
would you
good
say,
agricultural
product?
practices.
Product safety. Or GAP, most people know about GAP.
Yeah,
Good
good
agriculture.
agricultural practices.
Describe your experience with good agricultural practices, including any certifications.
Describe your experience with good agricultural practices, including any certifications. Is that the
I
question?
think that's behind line,
Yep.
sum it up right there.
Sounds good.
Should we have plan or experiences? We want a plan. If they don't have the experience, at least they have a plan. They want to train
That's good.
staff.
What level of importance are you going to put on slide or important?
We're going to add a plan instead of experience. That way he's asking. If we do, I say it's just important. What do you think, Bob?
I could agree with that.
I'd say let's, in place of experience, let's say add plan, describe your plan.
It wouldn't be
Good
with then, it would be
agriculture.
for good agricultural practices.
For good agricultural practices. Yeah, parentheses, including
Parentheses,
certification.
GAP.
And then I'd say the importance level is just important.
Yeah,
Okay.
I agree.
Okay, I'm going to read that back to you. Describe your plan for good agriculture practices, parentheses, GAP, in parentheses, comma, including any certifications. Level is important.
Yep.
Okay. New question 4. Describe the quality control plan for the proposed cultivation facility.
And that's pretty open-ended. I think you need to know what their plan is for control.
Yeah, and so you can understand as well. So the question will be posed. There will be a cell that will have a character or word limit. I'm just going to make it up. Let's say 3,000 words. So you get to describe something, and then there's going to be the opportunity to attach documents to prove what you have claimed. So I would envision a question like this. They will do some sort of description, and then assuming they have a quality control plan, they will attach it, and that will be part of what is reviewed.
Yep.
I like it. I understand what it's asking. I'd say it's important, maybe highly.
I was going to say highly important.
Quality control is
Yeah,
is typically in all aspects very important.
especially
So I'd
with
say
this.
highly important.
Yeah.
Okay. highly important on that question 4. That concludes them all, so I'm going to ask one final time. Is there any other amendments or changes you would like to make to the package of questions that you have just went through?
I have none.
I wonder if we could add one question on the process flow. I would like to know the operation. What's their design? We have the structure, we have the manager, but how do they operate? Operation, process, flow? chart?
That is included within the business plan section.
Okay. Because in that flow chart, then they can tell us where they're going to do the quality control.
Okay, so then, hearing none, I'm going to say, all those in favor of accepting the questions as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Ayes have it. We appreciate your help in this endeavor.
You're welcome.
And that concludes our meeting.